Welcome to episode 6 of Roleplay Geeks. In this episode, we talk about role-playing video games, what we love, what we don't, what we hope the next generation of games will offer, and then we talk about bowling with babies. Stick around to find out what games you might be missing, and which ones you're glad you did.
Welcome to this episode of Roleplay Geeks. I'm Frank.
I'm the hippie John.
I'm Steve.
And I'm Jim.
This week we're going to talk about something that's a little bit different than what we talked about in the past. In the past we've talked about sort of pen and paper, old school book on a table, everybody sitting around the same table doing stuff, type of role-playing games, which I think all of us cut our teeth on back in the day, as they say. This week we're going to talk about computer role-playing games, which is a different critter entirely. I personally would have to say that if I had to choose my druthers, I would rather not play a computer role-playing game. I've never really gravitated to them personally, so this topic's going to be a little interesting for me. But let's open it up a little bit and talk about computer role-playing games. What's your favorite? What's your favorite single player, for example? I'm going to point to Jimmy, make him go first.
Mass Effect 2. I love it. It's fantastic.
So why? Why do you like Mass Effect? Why is it better than Mass Effect 1 and not as good as 3 or whatever? I know. Why did you pick 2?
I thought it was a bit more polished than 1. The graphics were updated. That was better. And I love the story. The support characters had their own little background stories, and it all factored into the end game. BioWare does that really well.
Did either of you guys play Mass Effect 2?
I think I played it just maybe an hour or two. I played the original Mass Effect, and I'm trying to remember how far I got in it. No more than about 4 hours into it, and just I got tired of you need to go here, and you had to keep going through all the different doors and stuff, and it was, here's another transition. Dear God, I'm about to kill myself. And I just got really tired of, transition. Here's another transition. Here's another transition, and it just seemed like it took forever just to go and tell someone, hey, you need to go get this. No, you need to do it. It's here. I mean, I just hated it. It seemed like there was a lot of fetch quests.
Yeah, that's what I thought about Mass Effect.
And it was very slow because of the way they did the transitions and where you had to go. And then it was like, is it across the courtyard, or is it down below me? Or, I got really annoyed about it, and I got more frustrated than any enjoyment I derived out of it. So I just kind of stopped playing it.
So what make 2 better in that regard? It was sort of the same thing? Because I never actually played 2. I get annoyed enough with 1. I never picked up 2.
No, it was the story. I mean, I think they do story really well. Game mechanics-wise, probably not as well. And I think that's what your main complaints would be, is some of the playability aspects of it. But the story was really good at. So, and the story wasn't just linear. You had branches that could occur based on how you responded to the various support characters. And somebody lives, somebody dies, at the end,
So interesting enough, the thing I remember about Mass Effect 1 was being, just like John, I remember being really annoyed by the go here, talk to this guy. Oh, no, you go tell them this. No, you tell them that. I'm like, when people make a phone call in the science fiction future? I mean, we have cell phones now, but that annoyed me. But it was one of the first games I ever played that had that mechanic where you had mount points for guns. So you could have a gun over each shoulder or something like that. And you had to think what weapon loadout you wanted, because depending on where you had your weapons. And it was really cool because it was a third person's perspective. And I also really liked the style of the world. I remember being on was it Space Station or whatever the heck that is? Mm-hmm. I thought it looked really, really cool. So I had this really love-hate relationship with Mass Effect that kept me from 2. But Steve hasn't weighed in.
I opened Mass Effect 1 and went through the intro. And I was working with a guy at the time, and I found out with talking with people from, say, 30 to 20, that quite a few of them said that Mass Effect was their Star Wars. And I thought that was really cool, because they said, we've been growing up on games in a way that you haven't, because the games that we've been growing up on are so much more cinematic, and there are so many connections, and they have bona fide sequels. And so this particular guy told me to skip 1, go to 2, And then if I didn't like 2, go to 3. And he was talking how there were iterations of the combat system that were different in each one of them. And that he liked 2 most of all, but 3 had its pluses and minuses. But I ended up playing about 4 or 5 hours of 2, and I just kind of ended up going back to Skyrim because I felt it was a little too on rails for me. But that's okay. Some games I like to be on rails like that. But the way the perspective was for your character and moving them, I didn't quite like that either. It felt like I should be able to go behind something when I couldn't, or over something and I couldn't. But then again, I've been complaining about character movement in first-person role-playing games since Arena came out.
So let's jump to John. What's your favorite single-player computer role-playing game?
Well, see, that's really a tough one to do. My favorite setting is Fallout by far, just hands down. But in terms of fantasy and most like playing an actual tabletop role-playing game, it'd be Baldur's Gate. You know, you had the party, which is really kind of cool, and so you could have your support characters and your main character or whatever, and depending on how who you spoke with and who you added to your party, that was really neat, and I really liked that. But in terms of the single-person feel, Fallout, I love the setting. I love the whole post-apocalyptic feel of it. The desolation, everyone's dead, everything's dead, you use whatever you can get your hands on. It was just fantastic. I love that. So Fallout's just awesome.
Okay, so I bounced over to John from Steve because he was just talking, so let's go back to Steve. What's your favorite single-player role-playing game?
I don't have one.
I don't believe you.
I don't have one. I've got a range because, you know, I kind of put things in my head on shelves. So I've got things that I particularly enjoy because of the time that they were in, and I can't divorce the fact that maybe something was primitive at the time versus complex now. So when I think about Treasure of Tarman on the Intellivision, which was the second official, I believe, Dungeons and Dragons game on a video game system, and it was also, I believe, so Treasure of Tarman being the first-person 3D style dungeon crawl that I'm aware of. I spent a lot of time on that, but, you know, I love Skyrim. I love Oblivion. I love Morrowind. I especially liked Arena when it came out. I think that was 1994. And Arena was unique, in my mind, to the other Elder Scroll games because you could climb. So you had a climb skill, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it was tied to dexterity. But you could climb up into the second-story window of a house in a town. You could climb up on a balcony and go through a door on the second story. You could climb up a cliff. So it opened up a whole other avenue of exploration that hadn't been in any game, to my knowledge, beforehand that I had played since the first Dungeons & Dragons game came out on the Intellivision, and I think that was 1982.
So let's ask the question a little differently, Steve, since you're being difficult.
Yeah.
You're going to be put on an island.
Yeah, you can take one game with you.
Game.
What is it?
One role-playing game.
One single-player, one-player game.
Thank you, Frank. Today. Not 20 years ago. Today.
You suck.
Yeah, we do, but what is it?
Damn it. Skyrim with all of the modifications.
Now, wasn't it that hard? Seriously?
Yes, it was that hard.
Goof.
It's not like their feelings are going to get hurt.
That's true, but my memories have feelings. It's true, damn it. I have a very complicated internal monologue.
So, with that, my favorite single-player game. I don't remember the name of mine, which is... No, truly, I don't remember the name of the game, but it was the game that was the sequel to System Shock. It was...
System Shock 2.
No, there was a game that was derivative of System Shock.
Deus Ex.
Yeah, that's it. Deus Ex.
Machina.
I really, really liked that game because it was like this cyberpunk game. I think I'm pretty sure that's the one that I'm remembering.
Yeah, I like the character building in it because you could build up different skills within the game.
Yeah, and then
based on use.
And then you also had like these quests that you would go off on, and then like different things impacted the world differently, and it was, you know, so there's different storylines as it were, and I really liked the dynamicism of that game, and it mixed a lot of other genres in beyond sort of the stereotypical. So that would probably be my favorite. But on a desert island, I'm taking Skyrim with all the mods.
Very good.
So, I mean, that's the thing, is that I think Skyrim has the most adaptability as a role-playing game. And it's certainly the one I played the most, but I really, really like Deus Ex. It hit me right. So that, and I have to say, I don't think I've ever completed, other than Deus Ex, a single-player role-playing game in my life. Didn't even complete Skyrim.
I think I'd have to say Morrowind. I played it quite a bit, but it was so fantastic in what they'd done with it. And one of the things about it that I enjoyed, though it was easy to get lost in, one of the problems I had, I never finished Morrowind, and that's the reason I would take it on a desert island, because I never completed it. But with all the mods and stuff, there'd be tons of stuff to do. You're never handheld. There's no leading you. Never feel like you're on rails. It's like, oh, you need to go to this city and kill this dude. Good luck. And or you know, there's a tree in the middle of the swamp with a rock next to it, and underneath that rock you'll find directions to the next part of the treasure. I mean, it was crazy what kind of stuff it kind of led you to, where you had to, you know, really kind of do everything yourself. You know, really look for things. There wasn't a little star on the map. None of that sort of thing. It was very intense. It was more like, I guess, more true to role-playing games, tabletop role-playing games in that respect.
There was a quest that you needed to do something in this little swamp town that was kind of right on the marsh, and it had something to do with a damn tree, and I couldn't figure it out for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. And right now I think I'm blocking it out of my mind. But those kinds of things were part of Morrowind and did make it really interesting and extremely frustrating.
Did you guys play the virtual doorstop that was Daggerfall?
And Battlespire.
Yes, I did.
That game sucked.
I enjoyed it for a little while. I mean, it was kind of like Arena, just...
You enjoyed it. You enjoyed it for like the 3.5 minutes it played before it crashed.
Well, you know...
Well...
That manufacturer is not known for...
I didn't have a lot of issue with crashes on it, as I recall. I think they were, you know, I mean, it was before Morrowind in terms of, you know, earlier in their game process and stuff. And it had a lot more of that same aspect to what Morrowind had. I don't think I ever finished that one.
I think what they did with that game was they took all of the bugs that they collected from Arena, took them out of the wastebasket and dumped them into another bin and called that Daggerfall.
No, that's what they did with Battlespire. Battlespire was the biggest hot mess of a game I've ever played.
I don't remember Battlespire.
Think Daggerfall, but multiplayer inside a giant citadel.
Okay, so Steve introduced a great word there, which is multiplayer, right? So let's use that as a nice segue. What's your favorite multiplayer computer role-playing game of all time?
EverQuest.
Let me clarify. Do you mean like MMO?
Well,
because we played.
I'm not clarifying.
Icewind Dale, remember?
Well, I'm not
multiplayer.
I'm not clarifying because I'm going to leave it up to you to decide. And I think that Icewind Dale is actually a valid. We played Baldur's Gate multiplayer for about 15 minutes, or a very short period of time.
Oh yeah, that's correct.
So I mean, and actually Skyrim has mods now that make it multiplayer too. So, or at least they did. I don't know if it ever got how well it worked. Icewind Dale was, I think, designed to play multiplayer out of the gate. So it was sort of built in. So I guess the way I would define it is any computer role-playing game is designed to be multiplayer. What's your favorite? Jimmy said EverQuest, which for me was the most frustrating game I've ever played and ultimately disappointing. And the reason is because if you made poor choices from the get-go, like for the character creation screen, without knowing the implications of your choices, if you made poor choices, then you were just screwed for the rest of the game.
Actually, you were just screwed throughout that game, regardless of what you did. Everything you did screwed you.
I hated it.
It was a terrible game for that.
Just leave it there. It's a terrible game.
Yeah, John hates EverQuest. But, it was the first massive multiplayer online game I played. and you had this avatar that you could really deck out. And a lot of times I would just sit around talking with people. So as sad as that sounds right now as I say it, but it was a good time just chatting with people, and every once in a while going out together as a group and trying to take something down. It was a lot of fun.
So what's yours, John, that's clearly not EverQuest?
Dark Age of Camelot. That one was awesome. I mean, it had issues, admittedly, but it worked fairly well for getting players together. I love the aspect for the end game where you could do then the raids, the player versus player raids. That I thought that was just awesome. I had so much fun doing that, and it made a lot of sense how they did it. It was well thought out. I mean, now they've actually got it back out where there's what the heck is it called? But people have servers set up. And
Phoenix,
they've modified Phoenix Shard, I think.
It felt like Dark Age of Camelot felt like EverQuest with like you're wearing diapers. It's for babies. It was so easy.
I think the analogy I would have gone with is a bowling alley with the bumpers down the side.
Oh, that's better.
Yeah,
with babies.
Wait.
Bowling with babies.
Wait.
Now I've got the Muppet babies in my head.
Wait.
Or the babies, the bumpers.
Yeah.
Okay, wait. Well, let's not derail this too much. There are many questions that we can explore. We're just going to leave them on the table because they have nothing to do with Roleplay Geeks.
Really, only two questions.
That doesn't matter.
And that's whether you're bowling with the babies as a partner or actually bowling with babies.
Yes, bowling with babies.
Thank you.
Okay, so, that's getting edited out, I'm assuming.
Oh, no, I'm leaving that in.
Okay, so.
Admittedly, it was easier, but it was a more enjoyable game, I think, just because you could actually get together with your friends and do stuff. And things didn't always turn out, but if you did the raids and stuff, they could be really engaging. There was an actual goal when you went out on raids. If you wanted to do like the full raids where you would capture an artifact, sometimes I just ran around and punked people and just got a lot of kills in. It was fun. It was amazingly well done. And admittedly, it is easier, but to tell the truth, what they did now on that Phoenix Shard we're talking about, the last I looked, they had actually modified the game file so that it was actually easier to level. So the idea is that you can level to level 50, I think they said 20 hours.
Does this go into the diaper comment?
No.
So
no.
I'm still stuck on, bowling with babies. I got that much stuck about it.
But
Okay.
it made it very interesting because the idea was
Bowling with babies or what?
Well, no, for this new modified DAOC, Dark Age of Camelot, where you level up to level 50 so that you can go ahead and get to in-game player versus player a lot quicker.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
You were talking about that in Fallout.
Right.
Because of the 50 level cap and being able, after that point, to kind of do whatever anyone could do after that point. Gotcha. I remember
So, what's yours, Steve?
that. Damn. Stop asking me questions.
That's the name of the game, man.
So I've played the least amount of multiplayer online games compared to you guys.
Because there are no games for Mac except Solitaire, I think.
Centipede.
Yeah.
No, I don't think they have Centipede.
No
That's
roller
way
controller.
too advanced.
I think this really cool game.
Man,
What's it
Macs
called?
suck.
Photoshop. I think.
Oh, yeah, Photoshop, right.
Yeah.
Photoshop. Levels or layers.
Or
Yeah.
Calculator.
Yeah.
Ooh, no.
I'm going home to play calculator on my Mac.
I'm going on a safari.
I added 80,000 plus 85, and you wouldn't believe what came up on the display.
So if anyone from Apple is listening to this, keep in mind that I am pretty much the sole holdout on this particular panel, and I support Apple and have for many years.
Apple is awesome. Everybody loves Apple. Apple's great. Please don't take us off your platform.
So, back to Steve.
Oh.
You haven't played much, but you're
No.
not dodging the question. Because there's one you've played a lot, so certainly you can answer that one.
I have, but I don't know. So
You can't say because you haven't tried them all, you can't say. You have to say your favorite. Of the ones you have tried, what's your favorite?
D&D Online with you guys.
D&D Online. It's a good choice.
Oh, yeah, that was actually a really good choice.
Oh,
Yeah.
I forgot about that one. That is a good one.
That is actually very, very good.
One word. Grease.
Oh my God, he uses it everywhere, even in video games. It drives me nuts.
Oh, it's delicious and useful.
Used in real life, in role-playing games, in computer role-playing games, and
bathroom breaks. It's terrible.
it's everywhere.
So-
That's
So D&D Online was a really...
I'm still thinking about making a video game about bowling with babies.
So
Sorry, Frank.
D&D Online is a really interesting game because, it in theory...
Sorry. Just give me a minute, Frank. Just in a minute. I can see the baby rolling down the lane.
See, I had the picture of the Muppet Babies.
Everything's funnier when it's a Muppet.
well, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
All right. So D&D Online is an interesting case because on paper, at least, no pun intended, it would bridge the gap between pen and paper and video games. That's sort of where it would sit within the milieu, if you will, of role-playing games. And I really liked that game. I thought it had a lot of compelling points to do some of that. But it wasn't perfect, by large. And the biggest problem with it, of course, is that if you paid money, you got to do everything. And if you paid nothing, you didn't get to do much. And it kind of sucked in that regard. You get they have to make money, but it was a little annoying at how much they restricted, different quests and stuff like that. But that was a lot of fun. I did enjoy that game a lot.
even though it was based on an outdated system and it felt like it was always behind the current time, it was at least a flavor of Dungeons and Dragons that gave us the ability to tailor a character, not unlike we would with pen and paper.
Yeah, it was 3 whatever rules, I think.
It was a little behind in, like artistically from like just a playability standpoint. The art was a little bit dated, but it still wasn't bad. But the really cool thing was the traps. They had really cool design of traps in some of the dungeons.
Most of those games tend to be kill thing, loot, move on, kill thing, loot, move on. That's how they tend to be, even though there's some story underneath it. That was very much like, okay, you got to think this through a little bit. A little bit. It's not quite as robust as a true pen and paper role playing game, but you did have to think it through a bit.
Do you guys remember the one that Gary Gygax narrated?
No?
Oh, yeah,
my-
there's one. Which one was that one?
Is that the one with the spires that took us like 7 hours to work our way through?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't.
I thought that was
remember.
that. Yeah, because I thought I've been the same thing, Frank. I thought it was that one where you
Maybe
had to
it is
kind of
because-
keep going like up
Yeah, it was like
Yeah.
there's like 3 spires and you had to go like up one and then back down and then up. And it was
because
a
you had
real
the different
pain.
things you had to switch off and stuff.
Yeah.
That was a tough one because you had to figure out what to do, and then the creatures were hard. So it was a lot of fun.
It
I
was
enjoyed that one.
that was a really good one. Yeah.
John kept falling off the platforms.
A lot of times I was trying to jump to other platforms, and sometimes it worked, and sometimes it did not.
Oh, wait. What was that, like the internal room with the big platforms?
I think so. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It was really well done. So yeah, I think that one was actually voiced by Gary Gygax.
I had no idea.
That's exactly how I expected Gary Gygax to sound. I think that's the first time I heard him. Maybe he was on an episode of Futurama.
I think he was on an episode of Futurama, but I don't. I mean, you're right. He does sound like you think he would sound.
Yeah, the creator of Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some dynamics of computer role-playing games. So Jimmy mentioned story on single-player role-playing games. And obviously we know what his favorite story is. Steve wouldn't answer the question because really when you get down to it, he was looking at dynamics of games. I liked this game for this. I liked that game for that. And Steve did something interesting there is he talked about the history, which was kind of neat. So I like this game a lot because it was the first time it introduced jumping dynamics or something like that. What's the thing about computer role-playing games that makes you go, oh, this, I like this? And what makes you go, not my thing?
When they take a game mechanic, and implement it really well, or not well, but it's a new way that's moving you closer to that Star Trek, virtual reality room.
It's called a holodeck.
You like aspects of games that move things a little more towards reality or towards what you're used to with a paper?
I can give some good examples. So let's start with System Shock 2. I vaguely remember System Shock 1. They did it in that game as well. They added in the ability for your character to improve down different branches. and it was a first-person shooter, so it did both of those things. I think that was the first game I played. It might not have been the first game that did that, but it was the first-person shooter style game that did that I'm aware of. And I really liked that particular game mechanic added. And then, like Dungeons & Dragons Online, I'm sure it wasn't the first to do this, but it was the first where I really noticed and enjoyed the game as a whole. But they had instances where you could get your party together and not have to worry about other people coming in. That was a big problem with EverQuest. You'd go in and try to kill something, and a guy 20 levels above you would come in and solo it. And
well, that was the problem with like all those, whether Dark Age of Camelot or World of Warcraft or any of those things, that you kind of had to coexist with you and 17,000 of your closest people you've never met in your life.
Right, until like Dungeons & Dragons Online and Guild Wars did that.
Guild Wars is the first I remember doing that instance dungeon-y thing, and I really like that part too. That was...
So it's those game mechanics, I think, that move it closer to being the perfect role-playing game. I don't even remember what the question was now, but I think it was something.
What's the mechanics that draw you to a role-playing game, computer role-playing game?
Yeah, those that get me closer to the tabletop experience. That's why I think Dungeons & Dragons Online is probably the best one for that I've played so far.
Steve?
Oh, yeah. We played modules, and we did that in the beginning. And modules were exciting, and you'd get a new module, and one of us would run it, and it would be fantastic, and I just gleeked. I was disturbed by that. Did anyone else notice that when I
No,
did
not at all.
No,
In fact, if
me?
you hadn't mentioned it, you would have had to...
I'm disturbed that you
That's
use
awesome.
that word.
But you don't have gaps in your front teeth like I do.
I'm disturbed.
It makes me sound like I'm some kind of mutant.
Yeah.
That's
My hill people came from a different strain.
That's I'm sorry, I come from a far-toothed strain of hill folk. So,
I come from the town of Fartooth.
There's just a lot of whistling in the wind. It's just all the houses are arranged in such a way.
Would you like to see my webbed feet?
It's got no room for webbed feet when you got a sixth toe.
There, boy.
What? Wait.
That boy can swim.
Oh, man.
Anyway, back to Steve's answer to the question, which is, what mechanics draw you to a game?
It's got to make me feel like I'm accomplishing something that isn't spoon-fed. And so I felt a little like John was saying about Mass Effect, that it was a little too spoon-fed. And I like the ability to branch off and do your own thing. So I understand the games are built with a particular end game in mind, and you have quests to complete and all that, but I much prefer it when I've got a wide latitude to do my own thing. But it can't just be empty. It can't be, sparsely populated. The world can't be bland. It's got to be diverse, and it's got to give me things that I can do when I go out. It's got to be a fully realized, populated. Words!
Words be hard.
Words! Well, I got to get them through these teeth.
So basically you would say is that in a lot of ways, this is similar to what we talked about with how you run a game, different ways you could do a story. So one is you can make a realized universe and allow your characters to go forth. You like a computer role-playing game that does that for you. It allows you to explore the world in a fashion that you devise as opposed to following along a story.
Yeah. The favorite game that I've ever played that is on rails for a role-playing game is actually a game called Skies of Arcadia on the Dreamcast. And it's a Japanese style fantasy role-playing game, but the world itself is so fully realized and unique, and the story is so great as it carries you along that I could play it over and over. But that's the only one like that I've really taken to in all this time.
What about you, John?
So for me, one of the biggest things that I always liked was exploration and discovery. So I like to go and eke out the little,
Yeah, remember his
corners
favorite
of the
class was Ranger forever, so there's probably a correlation there.
Yeah. So like, it was really funny when I first started playing Fallout, the original Fallout game. One of the issues in it.
So you said the original Fallout game. Do you mean the overhead isometric style?
Yes, yeah. Fallout 1. So in that game, you're supposed to find a water chip for your vault to save everyone in your vault. And so when I started playing it, I got so enamored with just going places and going into different towns and completely combing through everything, every box, everything behind every corner, down every alley, talking to everyone and then doing everything. And then I got to a point and I'm like, oh, I've got 3 days to find the water chip and that's on the entire other side of the game probably. And I mean, I everybody died. So I didn't actually complete it the first time through. I had to go back and do it again. Now there were ways to kind of give yourself time. But I didn't. I just got so enamored with just, going and finding things and discovering new things and just, and having so much fun with that. I kind of got lost in it. And I kind of did something similar with Morrowind. I started off, you're supposed to go find this thing, and right off the bat, they tell you, oh, you need to go find some guy in some city, I think is what they tell you to do. And I immediately started off going east or something to where where you start from. And I'm like, oh, it's a cave. Then it was just all over because I went in that cave and, I'm going to try and kill these things. Oh, they're way higher level than I am. Oh, maybe I can get up on top of this cliff up here and I can shoot them from above and they can't attack me. Oh, I got killed, yes. And I just kept doing that and I just kind of lost the thread of the game. That's the reason I never finished Morrowind. I got so enamored with discovery.
It's like John is from the clan. I see something shiny.
Exactly. Ooh, a piece of candy. Ooh, a piece of candy.
Their logo is ADHD.
That's very true. I mean, that's the thing is that normally I don't have a problem with that. If I needed to focus on stuff for work or other things, I don't have a problem with it. But when I'm playing a game, it is very easy for me just to go, oh, side quest. Yes, please. And more.
John will save us. Have you met John? Our odds aren't good.
I'll save you. I promise. I'll be back in 6 years.
Yeah, just hold out a little while longer.
just a little bit more. I'm almost to the end of the road.
6 years later, where are you from? Oh, crap.
That's exactly what I was saying about Fallout. I just, son of a, oh yeah, I'm supposed to go see those people.
Did we get to you, Frank?
No.
Haha, you're trying to slip by again, eh?
Yeah, I actually haven't been answering any of the questions to this podcast.
You suck.
So, and part of the reason I don't really think I need to answer this question is because my answer would be yes. Reality, if I were to sit down and made my perfect computer role-playing game, it would definitely have to have elements that each of you have already mentioned. And it's one of the reasons that I feel I gravitate more towards sandbox games now. I want a game that does not include me and 17,000 people I've never met in my entire life. I want to play a game with just the people I know. And I want what I've called a largely multiplayer role-playing game. I am interested in multiplayer games, but only with people I really know. So I want it kind of constrained. And the same token, I don't really want a story that much, which is why single-player role-playing games don't terribly interest me. And I've said for years, oddly enough, if you say, go get me 50 fruit flies from this orchard over here, and it's a single-player game, I'm just like, I don't want to be bothered. I connect via the internet to one of my friends, like with John or somebody. I'm like, yeah, let's do that. This is the best game ever. I mean, it's something about the multiplayer experience. I suddenly take these mundane tasks, and it doesn't bother me nearly as much. But I want just the world to exist that I can do things in and sort of chart my own path, kind of like what Steve said. But also, like John, I want to explore. I just want to explore the world around me a lot. So the things that really interest me are best encapsulated in a sandbox game right now, even though they have next to no story. They have like zero story to speak of. If you take a game like Minecraft, I mean, there's something there, maybe, I guess, but not really. And that's the part that's missing for the game for me. But if you could infuse that with all the little mini quests of Skyrim, then it would be the best game ever for me. Okay, so I didn't answer the question of what's my favorite multiplayer role-playing game, and because I was going to give a Steve answer, which is I really like different ones for different reasons. And I hated different ones for different reasons. I hated EverQuest. I absolutely hated EverQuest, except for it was the first one that I got to play this. And it was so much fun, but I felt like everybody's 12-year-old cousin that was forced to make tag along, but nobody actually really wanted there. And I couldn't keep up. I just couldn't keep up. And so things would happen. I'm like, what's that? Why can't I? Oh, I died. Okay, I'll go back here. It just was not fun for me because I didn't really get to play with all the big boys, so to speak. And then Dark Age of Camelot, I really, really loved that setting. And I liked that game until I hit level 23 or something like that. And the way they did leveling is like, you went on and on and on, and if you died, you went back to the beginning of that level. And then you got experience up to the next level, and if you died, you went back to the beginning of that level. And I stayed there forever, and then everybody else went forward because I happened to have picked a character that was really hard to solo and didn't do a lot useful with parties. And I didn't know that. So it was kind of a terrible character.
I think they had stages, but still it was kind of tough because you couldn't really just go by yourself and do a lot of stuff. You were kind of screwed because for you to gain any experience on, meaningful, you were kind of stuck with going against some pretty hard stuff, and it was really easy to get kind of overwhelmed, I think. So
yeah, but I can remember doing things in that game that I was like, that were a lot of fun. So I have a lot of good memories about that game, but even though I can remember the things that were frustrating about it. So, but at the same token, World of Warcraft, if I had to pick one, I'd probably pick World of Warcraft simply because I played it the most and I had the most number of really fun memories. When John and I first played the game, there was a time that all we did was we ran to the Dwarven City, I think, and we ran from we took a boat from the Elven area because we're both night elves, and we went to, I forget, this place off the coast or whatever, and we ran up a big mountain and back down a big mountain, and it was way higher level than we were supposed to do, but it was so much fun, and all we were doing was running up a path and trying not to die, and for some reason that was a lot of fun for me. And then there was another one that was this Crimson Monastery that we were all playing together, and it was really hard.
Well, yeah, that was a tough one. I remember that one. Yeah, we had a good time with that one.
Yeah, and it was a lot of fun playing together and working together, and we played with our friend Keith, and we played with James, and that was a lot of fun for me. So I have a lot of good memories about playing that.
That was the last one we played. I think that was the last area that we played mostly.
Yeah, I mean,
but that was the one that kind of came out that was really showing your character didn't really, because you were a hunter, I think. Right?
Yeah, I was a hunter. Yeah,
and I think it was showing how your character didn't really work very well. Because the problem was that you could do pretty good damage, but you didn't have the hit points to be a tank.
Yeah.
But a lot of times you'd actually pull a lot of aggro to yourself, and then you'd get nearly slaughtered, or you would get slaughtered, and it was like, well, crap. But then took a long time to get back to get in where we were. But
I really enjoyed that quest, and I had a lot of fun playing that. And then D&D Online, which is by far probably my second least favorite version of D&D, rule set wise. And like Jimmy said, very boring graphics, but and there was a lot of redundancy. If we sat down and played D&D Online again now, we would have to go through the same quests again and go, I did this already, this is boring, I don't want to do this. But I really liked playing that game. That was a lot of fun because it had a lot of dynamic parts, and it was big, and there was a lot of cool stuff on it. I didn't mind throwing money at it. So I really enjoyed that game, though there were issues with it, that it was a little boring in places because of redundancy, and it was a little frustrating. And then you have to keep doing the same stuff over and over again. And I really, really enjoyed Fallout 76 until I reached a point where, because of just an imbalance in the game, I was just too good, and it got really boring for me. But up until then, it was a lot of fun, and I have a lot of really good memories playing that game. And there's others in there that I could talk about too, but it's hard for me to pick one because it's all about playing with my friends, just like with a tabletop game. And it's those memories that matter the most for me and what triggers those memories. If I had to pick one, it'd be World of Warcraft simply because I have the most memories associated with it. But that's really it. I have issues with World of Warcraft. It's kind of boring. And, if Jimmy wants to say that Dark Age of Camelot is, in diapers, I don't even know what you would label World of Warcraft in comparison. I mean, it's so much more protected than it was in Dark Age of Camelot. The only way you can, the only way you could lose a Dark Age of Camelot or get yourself into trouble at this point in the game is essentially load it, put yourself in a dangerous area, and then go to the movies for the next and watch like all the Star Wars movies in a row, and you probably be dead when you get back, but maybe not. I mean, it was just,
or you leveled 12 levels.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not fun anymore in that regard. But when we first started, it was dangerous and it was really fun. We'd go into areas like, oh man, this is really hard, and I like that challenge bit and working together to do those things. And that's the part. I think that's probably the mechanic that drives me most in the multiplayer side of things.
In Fallout 76, I've loved it because of just how well they've represented a post-apocalyptic, fantasized West Virginia. However, Fallout 76 is starting to lose me finally because I've spent so much time shepherding people and putting effort. I think you used the word incentives, and games that don't give you incentive for something, I get tired of. And in Fallout 76 right now, it's gotten to the point where my playing with people and getting to kind of give my West Virginia history lessons and be an ambassador and, kind of educate people and all of that has been wonderful. But it's gotten to the point where that can no longer make up for the lack of incentive I have within the game, because I can go anywhere in the game except for one place by myself. There's no there's no problem if I die. I might lose my junk, but
see, here, this is a problem I have with this game is with playing other people, because I have no interest in something like Fallout 76 as a solo game. Doesn't interest me at any level. And one of the things I dislike about with games is when life interjects and I have to stop playing for a couple weeks or something like that, and people move beyond where I'm at. If I go with you to an area and you're just like boom, 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 everything's dead, this is no fun for me. Mm-hmm. There's no challenge, there's no shared experience of exploring a region.
Yeah.
Or there's no ability for me to go, look at this cool thing I found. I don't like it when somebody basically sort of pulls me around and says, okay, look over here, that's cool, look over here, this is cool.
Right.
That's that is terribly boring for me. Before we close this out, let's talk about and this will be a really tricky one for Jimmy because he's sort of given up on video games for the most part.
I thought you were going to say simple.
No.
Both are true. I am both simple, and I've given up video games.
One follows the other. I would,
Okay.
So,
how long's it been? 2 years?
Something like that. I don't know. Yeah. It doesn't matter. But anywho, so if you were to sit down and say, this would be my perfect computer role-playing game, and ignoring something really futuristic like the holodeck and Star Trek, in a realistic sense within your life, what would that look? What would it have to have? What would it not have that games have now? And Steve. Because I think Jimmy's going to need a minute to think that through.
No, he's got it.
All right.
Yeah, I
lay
do.
us on it.
We think.
In my lifetime, I think this is achievable. The Ready Player One movie, sort of like that kind of setup where you can be on a frictionless surface and do the VR stuff in a first-person Dungeons and Dragons style game with better graphics. Maybe the mechanics are better too, but in the future. So it'd be like a Traveler implementation.
So, John, what would yours look like?
I mean, I could just go and say that what Jimmy said sounds pretty awesome and stuff, but to tell the truth, I don't know. I mean, I've enjoyed a lot of these games. About any game that I've played, I've had a good time with. So some of these things I haven't gotten as much time with, I haven't put as much time into because I get kind of bored with for whatever reason. I don't know. I really have a tough time saying what my perfect game would be.
Steve,
Yeah.
could you answer it?
Minimally populated by real-life players, the ability to climb, fly if need be, use vehicles. Basically a Skyrim-style game, but with dynamic intelligence for the characters so that there are no repeat dialogues and everything branches, and it uses word logic where it's able to parse out things and, not lead you in circles with the same old text. Not that I've thought about it.
I think with the whole, like the speech thing, like you're talking about, I was playing a little bit of Fallout 76 last night, and I did the messenger quest. And so it starts going, it's a Mr. Handy robot who's lost, some sort of navigation thing, but it's having an issue and it asks you to help. And so it's going on, oh, please, if you're able to help me get that. And it goes on with this whole dialogue thing, and you go and you pick it up, and you can immediately put it in, and then it jumps up and it's ready to go. It actually starts off doing the quest, but it still is doing the dialogue of, oh, if you just go ahead and install it on me, I'll be able to get back up. And it goes on for about another 10, 15 seconds of doing this dialogue that's immaterial because you've already put it in, you fixed it, and it's already starting on the quest. And I was like, this would be one of those things that just a little bit of additional logic, they could have fixed it. So as soon as that came up, it would just interrupt what it was saying and go to the next part. Oh, thank you very much, sir. And go on. But, that's one of the little things about, kind of encapsulating the logic of, have you talked to this person before? Or did they already do what you're asking them to do, or whatever it might be? And I think that's where a lot of the stuff gets tricky, because I think a lot of the players, for a lot of things, there's, the console gaming has become a lot bigger than it was, so you have more people playing it, but want to play a lot of the PC games, the role-playing games. But Fallout 76 is a good example. They really put a lot more into the first-person shooter aspects of it, and so a lot of the actual role-playing aspects, or the AI and everything else, just kind of, at least,
becomes secondary.
Right. Well, because of the biggest thing they focus on is like, oh, well, we want to make sure that the monsters attack really well, so it's a more engaging, challenging shooting game. Well, I mean, the shooting part's kind of neat, but role-playing game is where you're kind of going, and a lot of that involves some sort of decision-making or speeches or dialogue, to get to a point. And I think that's what's kind of lacking on some of the stuff now.
For me, it would be fairly simple because we're a lot closer than most people would realize. If you take the game 7 Days to Die, which I'm the only person at this table I think that likes that game, but if you take that basic game where it's a world that you can do anything, you can destroy anything, you can construct anything, you can move anywhere, it's a ridiculously massive landscape of exploration, and add in quests, meaningful quests, and I get my friends to play it. That would be probably my perfect game, and definitely in the short term. Long term, of course, Jimmy's vision would be ideal, but that the fact that you can kind of make your own goal set in existence is very intriguing to me. And I like making bases, and I like making defenses, but I also like doing the exploration aspects of it and building things and constructing things. And so that would I think be the mechanics that would really get me there. It's from a next generation game. And it's something that I really liked about the promise of Fallout 76, but they just pulled back on some of that construction stuff a bit too much for me.
I mean, there's just not enough in it for you?
Yeah, they just pulled back and they said, well, okay, we're going to let you have a camp, but only within these sort of bounds. And it's like, well, that's nice, but the thing that's cool about something like 7 Days to Die, there's a lot of games like that, but that's just one. I can do anything. I can dig all the way to the bedrock. And make a tower that goes up 500 stories. I can do anything that I can conceive of, and it's kind of fun that way for me. So
it's like Minecraft.
Yeah, it's basically a lot like Minecraft, except for it's a little more dangerous, and there's something to the world that I need to worry about.
Yep.
See, and I love that about that game, because the first game that I played that had a destructible, interactable environment, was Power Stone, which is a fighting game on the Dreamcast. And it allowed you to have a relationship with the environment that I hadn't had in a game before. So 7 Days to Die gives a very similar feel to that, because it doesn't matter if you build part of a camp over here or part of a camp over here, or you dig this there, it doesn't matter. And if something like Skyrim or even Fallout had just a portion of that was done right, it would add so much to the game.
Yeah. And they really get to do a game world there, though. So everybody has their own sort of world, as opposed to the
right
instance.
Server.
Yeah,
right.
Because otherwise, we would agree to live in the same reality, and then what we do to that reality doesn't matter to what these other people over here are doing to their reality. And that's where I think it gets really tricky from a game design standpoint.
Well, on the Fallout side, they only allow? Do we know? Did we ever care to figure out how many people you could have on at a time on a particular instance of the world?
I think they at least the official thing was going to be like 32.
Okay.
And I don't know if they ever got even to that. I think they may have limited less than that, but I'm not sure.
I thought it was 20 something.
Yeah. Original thing, I think they said it was going to be 32, but I don't know if they ever really put more than maybe 24 on.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they do some things, because I'm pretty sure they use Amazon Web Services to basically run servers, instances,
right?
Get pulled up off those when they need them. So,
all right. So that's a pretty lengthy discussion about computer role-playing games.
Thank you for listening to episode 6. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. Comments, questions, criticisms, or love letters? You can reach us directly by emailing roleplaygeeks@roleplaygeeks.com. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook for updates. Plus, we have full episodes backed up on roleplaygeeks.com. And remember, all of us have the potential to be the best of us. Never stop leveling up.